Hey, let's talk about how you finish off a piece of furniture. Hi, I'm Margie with The Asking Spot. Now, traditionally, when it comes to wood furniture, they would recommend to all furniture makers that you put a lacquer on it. And lacquers are great because they kind of just meld into each other, so you can just put one coat right on after another without having to worry about sanding them down like you would if you use, say, a polycrylic. But I have found that lacquers and the cleanup and the smell, everything like that, it just didn't do it for me, so I don't like to use them. I may be picky. But when it comes to polycrylics, these are something I do like, especially the water-based, and I use them on a lot of the pieces I work with. However, they're not necessarily recommended for things that get a lot of use that are wood. Like, for instance, I'm working on a table. To finish it off with a polycrylic, you basically are putting a plastic layer on, and you have to sand in between before you put the next one so that they'll actually adhere to each other. They harden beautifully, and they're great on a lot of pieces of furniture or items that you would use that didn't get a lot of use, more decorative things, because they harden well and look beautiful, and they're easy, but they also chip. So for instance, a table that you're actually going to be eating on and using frequently, you wouldn't want to use a polycrylic on that. So that leaves us with the most traditional furniture topper there is, wax. And wax nowadays comes in a large variety. We've got all sorts of waxes. So which one's the best for you? There's a lot of variables with that. Let's put it basically. You're going to put down wax on your piece of furniture. You're going to rub it on, and then you're going to wait till it gets to the cured point, which is the cloudy point. You don't want to wait till it gets to the opaque point. That's going too far. Think of it as like when you'd wax a car. You'd put the turtle wax down and you'd wait till it got to a little cloudy, then you'd buff it off. But if you didn't get it buffed off right away, it became impossible. You have to almost scratch it off, which would be horrible for the paint. Same goes with wax. When you get to that stage of it, you pretty much have to use mineral spirits or just go right back to the starting point. Too much work. Watch for cloudiness. That's when you want to start buffing. And therein lies the difference between whether you use a liquid wax or whether you use a traditional wax. A traditional wax gets to that cloudy buff off point much sooner than the liquid wax. The liquid wax is super easy to apply because it gets into the grooves rather well. Both are going to be done with very small amounts and require multiple layers of it. But where else are there differences? Price. This is very expensive compared to this. So what are the differences between these two waxes? Well, this is about the same price as this. As you can see, you're getting half as much. However, the smell, like yuck. I can smell from here. Granted, I am a bit picky. So maybe it's just me. That's why I can't use this one. I will say this though, because it is so thick and because it is so dense, I probably would be able to do maybe 2 coats on a piece of furniture, the one that I'm working on right now, versus probably 3 coats, more like 4 coats with this one. So there is that. It is a time saver. If you can stomach the smell, by all means, go for it. It's your bang for your buck. And the smell doesn't stick around forever. It does linger for at least a good solid 24 to 48 hours, but after that, it should be fine. I have used it on other pieces that are in my home and they're fine. But since I found this wax, I am much happier. It has virtually very mild smell to almost pleasant smell, so I like that. I will say this liquid wax, it's like nothing. It smells super. And you can even get the boutique wax that actually smells really nice. They've added a scent to it, but heads up on those, the price starts going up as well. Like these little tiny boutique waxes, they have sort of a lavender smell to them, but they're about the same price. Another thing to mention about the liquid waxes is when you use these guys, they can get done to the cloudy buffing stage in a relatively short amount of time, whereas these guys, they're recommended for about 24 hours. The more liquid, the longer it takes to get to that cloudy stage. Now my problem with that is I don't want to go much beyond the cloudy stage. I never want to get to that opaque stage, because then we're going to go and have to get some mineral spirits and practically go back to square one. It's not worth it. So for me, these guys take too long. But application wise, they're super easy, and if you're patient, well worth it. Also, well worth it if you're doing, say, just a decorative piece that you know you're just going to do 2 coats of, go for it. Use the liquid version of it. But if you're doing furniture that you know you're going to need multiple coats on it because it's something that's going to get used, like for instance the table I'm working on, I really think the best is this middle ground, not too offensive, wax. How to apply them. The standard old-fashioned classic way, and I shouldn't say old-fashioned, but classic way, would be to put it on with steel wool. The idea is that the wax is going to be forming something that protects the table, so it will glide over with the steel wool, but the steel wool has the ability to get in every little groove, and you want to do it all in a circular motion. I just don't like working with steel wool. It's kind of like tinfoil and chewing. I like to use the brushes. You can just use an old-fashioned cloth. The brushes are the nice little bristles and everything on here really do wonders in getting in the grain of the wood, and that helps protect it more. Like I said, the cloth works. But what I usually do is I will use this to put it on, and then I use this to take it off. Biggest thing, no matter what way you use to apply it or what wax you use, remember to use a very, very small amount, because the more you put on, the more you have to buff off, and the harder it is to buff off. So it's better to just put a really light amount on it and then go, oh, hey, I missed a spot, or that's not covered enough, and come back and put on just a teeny bit more than it is to try to get them all off. Because, I mean, some of these waxes, they can harden, and you might even have to use mineral spirits to get them off. So, and that's all across the board, whatever wax you do use. I have found more people have reminded and suggested that you don't actually follow the instructions when it comes to how long you leave it on. Liquidier does take longer than the more solid ones, but their cans are the suggested time to leave it on. If you live in different climates, though, it's massively going to affect it. So it's better to try and put it on and buff it shortly thereafter in that section right off, and learn what it feels like, learn what it's doing to your particular piece of wood and in your climate. Let's discuss buffing off your wax. I imagine there's another word for it, but I haven't got it. Buffing off the wax is once it gets to that cloudy stage, you need to start rubbing it off. Now, traditionally, the most common recommended piece is a lint-free soft cloth. Cut up t-shirt. Yep, that works just fine, and you can use it. Does take a good bit of arm strength, and if you're going to be doing multiple coats, it can get a little bit tiring. There's also the other theory that you could use the steel wool, which would be in the 401 count, and that would work. However, I have come across this one other thing. It is a lint-free cloth, but it's a shop cloth. You know, these little yellow guys, probably you've got them in your garage right now. They've got just enough weave inside their fabric that they kind of add an extra. For me, they're the in-between steel wool and an old t-shirt, because they've got some of the grit that the steel wool offers without actually having that steel feeling. So there you go. Those are my tips for what you can do for your top coat, and hopefully that's been helpful.